music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Blunt Kelly, get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts flow.
Hello and welcome to the Bun Show. I hope you had a marvelous Thanksgiving dinner. I know I did. I have been, as you know, probably if you follow me on Blue Sky or Twitter, I've been making a lot of my own food lately. Like not just making my own food, but like grilling my own wheat and whatnot. And I've really enjoyed that. And this was my first Thanksgiving where I didn't even use any processed flour. I made stuffing from sourdough bread that I had made and fresh milled cornmeal from popcorn. And anyway, a whole meal I did, like pie crust from fresh milled flour and homemade pie filling, and everything was just no cans opened. And apart from like brown sugar and regular sugar and killing my own turkey, it was about as homemade as you can get. Now, and milking my own cows. But yeah, it was good. I hope yours was good. I hope you liked it. Even if it wasn't as good as mine, I know JD Vance wouldn't have liked it because he doesn't like turkey. But I did spatchcock my turkey for the first time. And if you've never done that, it is much better turkey. So anyway, having said that, I tried to avoid the news for the most part yesterday just because the assholes were being assholes. But eventually I had to succumb. And so I wanted to talk today about the DC shooter. And that kind of is getting tied into the evacuation in Afghanistan, which is something I've never really spent a lot of focus on during the podcast because it happened before my podcast started. But I thought it'd be a good time to kind of dive into that and look at really what actually happened. What was actually Biden's fault? What was actually Trump's fault? What was the Taliban's fault? And you know, there's so much has been about the shooter and what kind of vetting process he went through and whether he was thoroughly vetted enough. And the truth is, he could not have been more vetted. He was a CIA operative that worked in what's called a zero unit, and he wasn't just like in any zero unit. He was in like one of the most consequential zero units. He was, as I would say, he was probably more cleared than Dan Bonagino. He probably at least had to pass a lie detector test. Like, you can pass a, you know, like you can get through the you can get through the vetting process and still have problems later. So somebody asked if I'm okay. Yes, I'm okay. I don't know. Is there a reason that you're concerned, or I'm late, sorry. And I was waiting for you too. Do the thug shake grandpa. I don't know what that means. Sometimes comments on here are weird. I don't even is that like supposed to be an insult or I don't know. Feel free to clarify. But anyway, um I just guess I'll just start in on what's going on with the DC shooter, and I wrote a piece on this. His name is what is his name again? It's Ramalana Lakanawel, and he was 16 years old when he got recruited into this unit. I think they were called 03, and they were one of the elite units that would do the kind of things they did. And they had a lot of the U.S. troops that were working with those groups will tell you that they're alive today because of these, specialized units. And he did that as a kid. He was 16 when he got recruited. I mean, just think about that. Think about what you were doing when you were 16 years old. I doubt it was like executing citizens of your own country on behalf of another country because your country was run by, these religious extremists. And so he worked with them for years, and with the CIA. So they don't just like grab somebody off the street and say, "Hey, let's go kill some people." Like, this guy was associated with some of the most and familiar with some of the most intimate intelligence, the most delicate intelligence that we had over there. So of course he was vetted by the CIA. It would be silly to suppose he wasn't vetted by the CIA. And he was running these operations while Trump was president in his first term. All right, so let's not make this out like a Biden thing. All right, like they want to make this into something Biden did for some reason. But this guy, he was doing this stuff, right? And he came to America on this special program. It was called Operation Allies Welcome. And that wasn't just for, that's a lot of the news is talking about TPS, which is temporary protected status, which some of the Afghanis that were cleared to come here in those last days were here on TPS. But Operation Allies Welcome was people that had really worked intricately with U.S. troops and to whom their lives would be in danger if they were, stuck there with the Taliban. They would have most likely been executed. And so we've got some weird comments here. How long you been hating black? I don't know what that means. Got a hello. And I got a get off, man. He'll hit a little crit walk, bro. I don't know what that means. And do the thug shake, grandpa. So anyway, like I said, I get some weird comments on here. But they get mad at me if I don't like shine them so everybody can see their weird little comment. But anyway, so he was running these ops, and then when the U.S. pulled out, we brought him with us on this temporary, or on this Operation Allies Welcome. And then he got vetted again for that. And then he got vetted again when he requested a permanent green card. And then he got vetted again when he requested asylum. So that's at least 4 times he was vetted by the United States government. And I would say the one that he was, when he was working with the CIA, was probably the most extensive. I would say he is probably more vetted than like 99.9% of the people that come over here and request asylum. So everybody keeps talking about, oh, we need to go back and look at the vetting process, as though the vetting process was the problem. Nobody has identified anything that was missed in the vetting. Like, he wasn't running around doing terrorist activities or something like that, and there's no indication, even though Kash Patel and the Trump administration like wants to make this out to be a terrorist attack. I personally am not convinced it was a terrorist attack. I think that if you wanted to commit a terrorist attack, and this is just me thinking logically, I'm not going to do it with a gun that only has 6 bullets in it. Like, this is not a guy that didn't understand how to do things like this. This was a guy that was trained by the US military and the CIA exactly how to carry out an operation like this, to like really do damage. This wasn't just some dude that thought, hey, I'm gonna go kill a couple of troops. Like, he knew if he wanted to do a lot of damage, he could have done a lot more damage. In fact, it's almost like he tried to do the minimum amount of damage he could while doing actual damage. And so he drove to DC from Washington State to Washington DC. That's a long drive, but it's also a lot of time to think. It's a lot of time to go, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe I can change my mind. There's a kind of determination in that drive that I find interesting. Like, you really have to want to do what you're going to do, to drive across the continent to do it. So then he parks his car like 2 blocks away from where the shooting was, or I'm sorry, the shooting was like 2 blocks away from the White House. And according to some reports I was reading, it's literally as close as you could get to the White House without, like actually engaging with military. And then he executes and tries to execute these 2 guardsmen with his little pistol. Well, not little pistol. I guess it was a big pistol. It was a .357, but it was a pistol, and it wasn't even like a Magnum, where you could get 10 or 12 shots. It was a Smith & Wesson, where you only had the 6 bullets, which is just not what a terrorist would do. Not someone that knew what they were doing would do, and he knew what he was doing. So that he did that, I'm not trying to say there's a conspiracy here. I'm just trying to say I don't think his intentions were that of a terrorist. I think his intentions were that of somebody that's trying to commit suicide by cop, only he's using National Security Guard or National Guard people as in place of the cops. I think he was trying to kill himself by carrying out this attack. I think that if you go and you look at the kind of things he did, the kind of things that these zero I don't want to say zero groups do and did, these kind of operational units he was in, they did a lot of horrific crap. They did the worst stuff for the CIA. They did stuff that the CIA couldn't do because it wasn't legal for them to do it. They did some nasty stuff. And he was a GPS tracker for them. And so he saw and participated in some pretty terrible things against his own countrymen to try and make his country better, right? I can only think, like, I'm just putting myself in his head. I think he's doing this for what he would consider at the time, the 16-year-old kid that was doing this stuff was doing it for patriotic reasons, according to him. Just trying to understand where he's really coming from. I think that he believed in what he was doing when he was helping the CIA to overthrow his own country. And then he does that. He puts his life on the line. And not only his life, his family's life on the line. Every day for years, he risks his life and his family's life. And then the US just pulls out. And, at least they take him with them, right? But I think that is one sense of betrayal that a lot of the people that helped us in Afghanistan genuinely felt, was that this pullout was just so abrupt and so quick and so fatal to everything that they had risked their lives and worked for, right? But at least they brought them people that helped them back with them. And I'll get more into the whole withdrawal thing in a bit, but right now I'm just trying to focus on this one man and how he must have felt about that. So then he goes to Washington and he just kind of lives his life with his wife and his kids, and they then he gets granted asylum, but then Trump pulls TPS status for everybody from Afghanistan. And all these people that had risked their lives are suddenly now in danger of being sent to go back to Afghanistan, where they're going to get killed by the Taliban. They helped us, right? They helped Americans. These are translators and people like that risked their lives to help America, now being betrayed by Americans. So you talk, like, there's veteran groups. If you look around, you see people that they say there's the two great betrayals: the betrayal in 2021 and the betrayal in 2025. And so what could have sent this man over the edge? My thinking is this second betrayal. Maybe, like, I as far as I know, I haven't seen anything that he was in danger of being deported. But there are probably people he worked with, people he loved, people that he genuinely cared for that would be in danger if they were returned, who were suddenly in danger of being returned. And so there's, like, two things that are symbolic: the US military and the White House. Are these two things symbolic of what his struggle has actually been, right? And so for him to jump in a car and drive, and then in a symbolic act, shoot these two National Guardsmen as close to the White House as he can, like, in his mind. I'm not saying this is justified. I'm not saying this means I'm okay with it. I'm just saying, if you try to understand him as a human being, this could make sense to me, that this is what he's doing. And so he shoots these two guard people. He murders one. The other one, hopefully they'll pull through, but still, they're, like, they didn't do it. I'm not saying they deserve anything. So, like, don't take things beyond what I am saying. Although I know some people will. But, and this is why I think it's important that rather than just vilify every immigrant, every person of color from another country, whether they're here legally or not, rather than make it all about what, Biden's vetting process, that we actually slow down and take a breath and actually think what happened, like, what really happened. Like, don't politicize it. Don't make it about Trump having the troops in DC. And don't make it about Biden and the pullout in Afghanistan. It's not about either one of those things. The guy did not jump in a car and just go and decide to shoot troops in DC because he wanted to make a statement about there shouldn't be troops in DC. It's not a terrorist attack. If it were a terrorist attack, the targets would not have been two nobody National Guards people. and there wouldn't have just been 2 victims. Not when the man has this much training. I think it was a suicide attempt. That's me. I mean, I'm not an expert. I could be wrong. There could be some CIA analyst that would jump on here and explain to me why I'm being stupid, and that's the case, then I'll retract it. But right now, I don't see anything inconsistent with what I'm saying. All I see is one guy drove across the country, parked his car, got out, walked, and then shot 2 National Guardsmen with a gun that could only fire 6 shots. And that's sad. But I also think it's sad. This man, we have our own troops that come back. They've seen less violence than he did. And they have PTSD. They were seeing it in another country. He was seeing it in his own country. And they're grown men. And he was 16. And so he comes back, and we don't give him any mental health counseling. We don't help him with his PTSD. And I just have to wonder if what I'm saying is right. If he had somebody to talk to, like a professional person he could talk to while he's going through all of this, does he still do it? Like, could this have been prevented not by vetting better, but by following through better, by treating the Afghan soldiers that fought with us and we brought back here the same way we treat our own soldiers that we brought back here? They risked their lives. They made all the same sacrifices that our own soldiers did. Why can't they get the same kind of mental health counseling that our own soldiers do? That's just, I feel like sometimes if you try to talk about things like a rational human being and not as a liberal or a conservative, you get all kinds of people angry with you. And I'm not trying to justify anything. I'm not trying to say that what he did was okay. I'm trying to say I'm just trying to understand why he did what he did. Because I think we're going to move on better as a society and have a better chance of preventing future such things if we actually look at what the real problem is instead of just trying to politicize it. You've got Donald Trump with his America First agenda and his replacement theory politics, sitting there he's gonna reverse migrate people from 19 countries now, all of which are predominantly people of color. He's still got asylum seekers being allowed from South Africa as long as they're white. But all the other asylum seekers from South America or from Africa, from the third world countries, now we're not just cutting off asylum for them. We're not just ending refugee status from them. We are reverse migrating. We're going to start deporting people that already went through the process and came over here the right way. I've said on this show before, like people say, "Oh, why don't they just come over here the right way?" And I've said it's only a matter of time before it starts to escalate from there. You've got him trying to revoke the green card status of people coming over here the right way. He's already revoked the legal status of other people who came over here the right way. Don't say just come over here the right way and then back somebody that's deporting people that came over here the right way on the pretext of one person that shot 2 people. You may not have noticed this because, like the news doesn't really cover these things anymore. but American citizens also murder people. It happens. Like, really, no, no, truly. And all the American citizens that have shot people are not all transgender liberals. This is called uh, generalization fallacy, where you take one person that happens to be part of a group of people, and so you assign blame to the entire group. It's also called racism. It's also called xenophobia. Like, don't tell me that I can't call him a fascist or a Nazi when he is sitting there trying to deport everybody that ever came over here who is a person of color, where he's trying to end the immigration status of everybody that came over here that is a person of color, when he is even trying to revoke the citizenship of American citizens who were born here because their parents were people of color. He is literally trying to make America white again. He might not say it out loud, but you know, actions speak louder than words. And what he's doing is trying to deport everybody that has more skin pigment than Stephen Miller. So I don't think that's the way to go here. I don't think that using this as a justification for doing racist crap, I don't think that's the answer. Like, this is, in 9/11, after 9/11, there was like some people that wondered whether or not, this there was a cabal of Republicans that had actually allowed it to happen. And there was this white paper called PNAC. It was written in the mid to late 90s. I want to say like 96, 98. And it had signatories like Paul Wolf something or other. Anyway, and Donald Rumsfeld and a lot of the key players in the whole Iraq thing. And it even, in that white paper called the Project for the New American Century, it even had a statement in there about, like, what if there's some kind of terrorist disaster or something like that that happens, then we should blame Iraq and then use it as a justification for going after Saddam Hussein. And so then 9/11 happened, and we did exactly like that. And the people that had signed off on the Project for the New American Century were the key players in doing that. And so there were some people that were trying to stir up the like a conspiracy theory that we had let it happen. And I don't think that they allowed that to happen on purpose. I don't think they let it happen. I think that's kind of overblown. But I do think that they saw an opportunity where everybody else saw a tragedy. They saw something tragic and they said, we can exploit this for our own purposes. We can use this to get what we want. And I think that's what's happened again. I don't think that Donald Trump gives one flushable poop about either one of the guards people. He honestly does not. If you were to go up and ask him their names right now, he would not know their name. He won't even commit to going to the funeral of the one who died. He does not care about them. Don't let him think that you care, that he cares. Don't think that he cares. Don't let him think that he cares or that you believe he cares. He does not care. So he sees an opportunity, though, and he didn't even take him 24 full hours before he went from one Afghan asylum seeker that was thoroughly vetted 4 times, shooting 2 people, to removing everybody that immigrated from 19 countries. Again, I mean, logically, in logic, we call that a generalization fallacy. But really, it's just racism. He's playing on racism and xenophobia. And it's all about the replacement theory. It's all about making America white again. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. That's exactly what it is. All right. So, with that said, as promised, I will now talk a little bit about what actually happened in Afghanistan. Why was it such a disaster? And how much blame should Biden take, and how much blame should Trump take for it? So I'm going to share with you a dashboard that I made. Can you see it? All right. So this is about the Afghanistan withdrawal. And we were over there for 20 years. And I think that gets lost a little bit. We were there for 20 years. And the government that we left with collapsed in like a couple of weeks. I think it was 11 days. So to blame Biden for what happened and the government not holding together kind of ignores the prior 19 years of the war and not establishing a government in place. And there's a lot of stuff that happened. Like there was all kind of mismanagement under Bush, under Obama, under Trump, under Biden. All 4 of them. There was people on the Afghanistan army payroll that didn't exist. There was corruption involved. There was all kinds of stuff involved. And this kind of puppet government that they had tried to prop up was never really solid in the first place. And some of that factored into, we'll get into this, into Biden's thinking about why it was just time to pull out. Because if after 20 years you haven't established anything, are you going to establish anything after another 20 years? At what point do you just, cut the rope? So, all right. So it was going on for 20 years. We spent $2 trillion just on that war alone. And that's not even counting all the money we're paying on the interest that we took out on that $2 trillion. Took 11 days to completely fall apart. And in those 11 days, we evacuated 120,000 people. And one thing I'd just like to point out about this, that's actually pretty friggin' amazing. Like, we talk so much about the failure. What about the success of getting out 120,000 people in 10 days or 11 days? So, actually, I think I'll start off with the timeline. Just so we can go over what happened. It started off in February 29. Trump signed the Doha Agreement, where he set a May 21st deadline, a May 2021 deadline. In this agreement, he excluded the Afghanistan government and he legitimized the Taliban, and he released 5,000 Taliban prisoners. So this was all something that was already set in motion, right? Like from February of 2020. This was like COVID was just beginning to be an issue right now, right? And he agreed to reduce our troop reductions to 2,500. So just think about this. Look at these numbers. 5,000 Taliban prisoners, and these are all like senior leaders in Taliban, and reduced our US troops to 2,500. So what's 2,500 times 2? If you said 5,000, you get a math award. There were 2 Taliban senior fighters for every American troop that was still on the ground when Biden took office. This was true before Biden took office. That's not counting like all the Taliban troops. That's just the ones that were in prison. There were twice as many of them as there were American soldiers. Okay. So, then what happened between January 15th, 2021, or so, I'm sorry. So then, as they're being released, one thing that doesn't get mentioned a lot, as these people are being released, these Taliban prisoners, they're going around Afghanistan. They're going to all the villages and towns, and they're saying, look, surrender now. And, when this date comes, when the US pulls out, we won't kill you. We won't murder your entire town. And the elders or whatever of these different cities, whatever, like whatever governing structure they had, they're like, okay, yeah, we kind of like the idea of not being massacred. And so they surrendered to the Taliban before the pullout ever started. And that's why the whole collapse that's shocked all our, leadership and US intelligence, they had no idea this was going on. This was all while Trump was president. So the basically before Biden was ever even inaugurated, Afghanistan was done. And that was 100% Trump. You cannot blame Biden for something that happened while Trump was president. I think we can all agree on that. There was this was all it was inevitable. And so a lot of what I say about what happened with this, I compare it to Trump doused the house with kerosene, lit the match, set the whole thing on fire, and then complained about the cats that Joe Biden wasn't able to rescue from the house. I'm not saying that Joe Biden shouldn't get any criticism, but I'm saying he doesn't deserve all the criticism, and Trump probably deserves more of it. So then when Biden became president, he inherits the Doha Agreement and 2,500 troops on the ground. And Taliban is like just basically running a shadow government already. He extended the deadline a couple of months to give them more time. This may or may not have been a mistake. It's hard to know exactly. One of the things that they do with this is they look at, well, if he had done this, then things would have been better. If he had given up, or if he hadn't given up Bagram Field, then everything would have been okay. But that's got its own set of consequences that come with it. So Taliban negotiate local surrenders. So this is where this prearranged collapse that I was talking about happened. And then, so what happened is Biden left Bagram Air Force Base, and that only left the one civilian airport for all the evacuation operations. But there's a lot of talk where people talk about, like, well, he gave up Bagram, and that was the big sin. Even the most conservative reports were that he would have had to have 5,000 soldiers in Bagram just to defend Bagram, and that's probably not realistic. The more realistic ones were, like Miley said, General Miley said it would take like at least 25,000. And then there was concern too, like on the other hand, that if he did reinforce the troops, then the Taliban stops operating on the ceasefire. And if they stop operating on the ceasefire and start firing on troops again, then you've got like a full-scale re-engagement of hostilities. So yes, the way things happened, 13 people died, but that doesn't mean that nobody would have died if we had gotten Bagram or kept Bagram. We would have had to send in more troops that could have re-escalated conflicts there. There could have been a lot more than 13 people dying. And the ones that were advocating for that were advocating for a reverse in policy on Afghanistan. They wanted to reverse the whole the whole Doha agreement. They wanted to stay there. But that's where I come back to. We were there for 20 years and we didn't have any kind of government to leave them with. Why would another 20 years make a difference? So Biden was left between two really crappy choices, and he chose the less crappy choice. Now, you can blame him for choosing the less crappy option, but that doesn't mean that the option was any other option was better. And I have never heard anybody that complained about this offer a legitimate and viable way out where no American troops died, where things got better. People complain about the vetting process and, oh, well, why wasn't he vetting them sooner? I agree. He probably should have had some people vetting as soon as possible, right? Because he knew that this deadline was coming up. And so they should have accelerated those things. They thought there would be 6 months to a year. But I would also say, how come Trump never gets any of the same questions? How come nobody asked why Trump wasn't vetting things as soon as he made the Doha deal? Why not the 10 months where he was still president? You know, instead of running around talking about how, the election was being stolen from him. Why wasn't he doing it after the election? Why wasn't he even conveying to the Biden administration what was actually happening? There's an easy way to politically frame this to where the attack happened under Biden, the withdrawal happened under Biden, therefore it's his fault. But wouldn't that be the same as saying the DC attack happened under Trump, therefore it's Trump's fault? Like this idea of something happened while you're president doesn't mean that what happened because you were president. What would Trump have done differently? Like, what would he have actually done that would have made things go more smooth? Is Trump Jesus today? I think if you ask MAGAs, I think that they would say that he's actually like Jesus 2.0. He's Jesus with all the deity, but none of the liberal stuff. Okay, so then after they pull out now the one thing I would say with the Bagram that where I do find fault with Biden is I think that he should have done more to coordinate the handoff with the local government. I think that there was they were already feeling pretty defeated, and when the U.S. just pulled out the rug from underneath their feet, I think any will to fight back was gone by then. I think that was maybe the last domino to fall. And so, like, I do think that he does bear that responsibility, but I don't think that keeping Bagram was a realistic scenario, especially keeping Bagram without any casualties. Like, and I don't hear people that say he should have. I don't see them playing out the scenario to how he could have done that with better results. So then the first provincial capital falls just like a few weeks later. Then Kabul falls. And then, so by now we're up to mid-August. And there's this emergency evacuation where 120,000 people evacuated in chaotic airport operations. And then in Abbey Gate, there were 13 U.S. service members and 170 Afghans killed. And that's tragic. I'm not saying it's not tragic. I'm just saying evacuating 120,000 people in 11 days and only having 13 U.S. servicemen and 170 Afghans killed, that's actually pretty amazing. Like, it could have been so much worse. So much worse. And we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how that was, other than the bombing and other than that one incident, that it was actually pretty nonviolent. And, you know, I mean, what could you have even done to prevent Abbey Gate? If we had kept Bagum, do you really think that 13 people wouldn't have died? Do you think we wouldn't have lost 13 troops trying to keep Bagum? And then where would we be at now? Like, all I'm saying is we complain about the results we had, not the results we didn't have, because we don't know what the results we didn't have are. So, you know, it's like a football fan, or it's, you know, saying, oh, we could have drafted this person. It's easy to second guess. It's complaining about, oh, well, the coach went for it on 4th and 2 and he didn't make it, and that cost us the game. But if they had made it and won the game, then would you have, like, called him a genius? It's or what if, you know, if they had just punted instead of going for it and they'd still lost, would you said we should have gone for it? And they went for it and they didn't make it, and so they're like, some people just want to find an ulterior thing that you should have done after the fact and when it's too late, and then they never get their alternative scenario questioned. "54% of Americans between ages of 16 and 74 cannot read above a 6th grade reading level, according to." Yes. So then we were out of there by August 30th, and we are out of Afghanistan now. We have not been a nation at war for 4 years. A little over 4 years. Donald Trump's trying to end that. Mr. Wartime, you know, a peacetime president, no new wars, suddenly wants to go to war with everybody. But anyway, let's just go through. This is just, you know, my estimation of who bears responsibility and for what, and according to how much. The Doha agreement, some of it, there was going to be an agreement somewhere at some time that was just systemic, so that's 10%. Trump made the agreement and set all the conditions, so he deserves most of it. Biden could have just canceled it, so that's why I've got him at 10%. He could have ended the agreement. It would have had its own set of consequences, but if we're just looking at the Doha agreement, then he bears some responsibility for just not ending it. The prisoner release, 100% under Trump. Nobody else would have negotiated that, and they were all released while he was president. So nobody, like, there's nobody else to blame. There, you can't even possibly rationalize anybody but him releasing the 5,000 Taliban prisoners. He wanted to have them over to Camp David for like a party or something. The troop drawdown, 70% of that I've got for Trump, because it was almost done by the time Biden, like it was down to 2,500. I have Biden down as being partly responsible, not so much because of the drawdown, but because he could have reversed it. If he wanted to, he could have put back in the 25,000 troops or another 2,500 troops or however many would have needed to be able to keep Bagram. He chose not to do that for good reasons, but and then some of that was systemic. The SIV processing, this is like the visa processing stuff that happened, or like the expedited visa processing and trying to get all these people through, and the vetting that right now Trump is complaining about. And he had the nearly a full year to vet people that he did not vet, and now he's complaining that they weren't vetted enough. Well, why weren't you worried about it then, Donald? Why were you too busy trying to steal the country? Why were you too busy trying to lie about the election instead of actually doing your damn job? So he didn't do anything. Biden did not do enough when he took office before everything. I think that waiting until the last minute for both of them was a bad strategy. So gave them both responsibility, but Trump had more time than Biden. And Trump did not share information with Biden. So more of that actually goes on Trump. The evacuation planning, I've got mostly on Biden because he was the one who planned most of the evacuation. Blaming partly on Trump because Trump didn't plan an evacuation, even though he's the one that planned the actual Doha agreement. He's the one that made the agreement. This idea that Biden was supposed to take office in the middle of a pandemic and come up with a plan in 3 weeks, so it's kind of insane. The Bagram amendment, it's all on Biden because it was in the process. And like I said, I think eventually he made the right choice, but along with that comes the responsibility for making the choice. Both sides both Trump and Biden failed to see how quickly this collapse would happen. So not knowing about it is on both of them. But the overall chaos of it, I'll put more on Trump than Biden because Trump made the deal. And because, like I said, most of the kerosene had already been poured before Biden took office. Like with this movement where the Taliban were going around and getting all the towns to surrender in advance, like that had already occurred before Trump ever even left office. And so to give you an idea of what 25,000 troops back in Afghanistan would mean and why that would probably trigger Afghan back into like killing people. When they made the deal in February, there were 13,000 troops on the ground. So to keep Bagram, in all likelihood, according to General Miley, they would have needed 25,000 troops, which is double what things were in January of 2020. Was like you have to go back to sometime around 2013. You have to go back more than a decade. What was it in 2014? Have to go back more than a decade before it was you get to that kind of troop levels. And so that would maybe signal to the Taliban that we're pulling out of the Doha deal, and then they would have started like firing on troops again. So the original sin, Trump's Doha agreement, excluded the Afghan government, legitimized the Taliban as negotiating partners, and set a withdrawal deadline. This fundamentally undermining the Afghan state and made orderly withdrawal nearly impossible. Like everything was set in motion with the Doha agreement. It was terrible. It was like really, 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 really terrible. And there was no viable way for Biden to get out of it without things getting worse. The hollow state, the Afghan government collapsed in 11 days because it was never sustainable. Taliban pre-negotiated surrenders across provinces. 20 years and $2 trillion couldn't create a state willing to defend itself. Why would another 20 years work? So then the evacuation failure, Biden administration did not begin large-scale evacuation until after Kabul fell, creating desperate airport scenes. So this, like most of the optics are on Biden's fault, most of the blame is on Biden because the optics are on Biden. But I have really thought about this, and I cannot find a better way. It was just the least worst of a lot of terrible options that Biden settled on. But it did happen while Biden was president. I don't know if it would have been better if it were Trump, though. Biden inherited a situation where he could either continue withdraw or break the deal and stay indefinitely. And so those were his options. And those were options that Trump left him with. So, it's worth thinking of. Anyway, so let's think about like some of these what ifs. What if Trump processed the SIVs aggressively in 2020? Like, what if after he made the agreement, he started processing these visa requests to come over so that they weren't packed into like just a few months, but started evacuating them immediately? Like, what if some of them were even in here before there was an inauguration? What if some of them were in America before the inauguration? Why couldn't we have done that? How come nobody asked that? Like, he's there complaining about them not being vetted. Well, Mr. Trump, why didn't you vet them? You had the chance. You were president. You could have brought them over here and thoroughly vetted them yourself, but you chose not to. I'm not talking about granting the guy asylum in April. I'm talking about bringing them over here in the first place. You could have brought them over here. You could have vetted them according to whatever standards you chose, but you chose to not do that. This is like sometimes, like my wife doesn't do the dishes, so I do them. Then she complains about how I do the dishes. I say, well, then if you can just do them next time. Like, you don't get to not do the thing and then complain when somebody else does it that it's not done to your liking. So why didn't you do it, Donald? Why not? Why didn't you vet them? If you think that it was so important to vet them, why did you not do that? Why were you too busy worrying about whether or not the election was stolen? You were more worried about yourself than you were the country. That's why you're a terrible president. So if he does that and you've got all these people that are already safely over here, you don't have the same kind of chaos. You don't have Abbey-gate. Anybody want to explain to me why it's okay that Trump didn't vet a single person? What if Biden just broke the Doha deal, kept Bagram, and stayed? Reverse withdrawal decision, maintain indefinite presence. Likely outcome, war restarts, Taliban attacks resume, casualties mount. The political cost, imagine if that, right? Both the left and the right would have been destroying him for that. And rightly so. And I agree, he should not have done that. But the idea that he, like retroactively, people saying he should have, why didn't he just listen to the generals? The generals you're quoting wanted to restart the war. What if Biden sent 10,000 troops in May 2021? That would have quintupled the forces that were there. A major troop surge to secure evacuation, hold Bagram. Likely outcome, better infrastructure, but possible Taliban attacks on larger force. I think it's more than possible. I think it's highly likely. And then it could just escalate and snowball into the same as before. What if we keep Bagram through September, maintain 5,000 troops to secure base and 30-mile corridor to Kabul. But again, that's like doubling the troops that are there just in that one. Like anything that involved adding troops was going to trigger the Taliban. It's just, like the difference between adding 5,000, adding 10,000, and just reversing course is a matter of time. Like it's just a matter of time. 5,000 will become 10,000, which will become staying indefinitely. The Taliban was not going to be like, oh, okay, you can have the 5,000 here for the airfield because we totally trust you, bro. We believe what you're saying when you say that it's just temporary. The moment we broke the deal, they were going to break us. And we just did not have enough forces to just not. They had like, I think 120,000 in their army. Do you think we're going to stop them with 5,000 troops? What if early mass SIV evacuation? So what if when Biden took office, he had started the mass evacuations earlier? Then things are probably better, but there's still some risk to that because we'd be just accelerate the timeline. Like things would just collapse sooner. I don't know how much of an end difference it could have made. If there was a way to secretly do it, then maybe that would help. What if we followed Trump's May deadline that he bragged about, oh, I set things in motion and Biden can't do anything about it. As though Biden was saying, like, it's not like Biden was saying he wanted to do anything to stop it. But Trump was bragging that Biden couldn't stop it. That's one of the things that I also find funny that the media doesn't talk about. They don't talk about this on Fox and Friends. They did before. They did before the whole thing happened. But afterwards, you never hear them quote the quotes about how Trump was saying Biden couldn't stop it. But then after Abigate, after the disaster, the pullout, then it was like all of a sudden Biden's fault. This Trump literally said, well, figuratively said, I set the fire and Joe Biden can't put it out. And then Fox News now is blaming Joe Biden for not putting out the fire that Donald Trump bragged about starting. What if condition-based withdrawal? He could have tried to renegotiate Doha, tie withdrawal stability metrics and Taliban behavior. That would seem like a reasonable alternative, provided the Taliban accepts it. Like, what negotiating strength do we have? Why would Taliban say, "Oh yes, we will agree with this"? They have no negotiating strength, or we have no negotiating strength. I just think anything we do that was going to effectively change the outcome would require sending in more troops. And the moment we start sending in more troops is the moment that things get worse. So I'm not sure that everything gets better if we keep, you have people like Joe Scarborough always talking about we should have just kept back. How? How, Joe? Explain to me. It's easy to say we should have just done this. It is not so easy to explain how we just do this. Okay. Oh, that's from the earlier. U.S. Department of Education also said there is a law called IDEA, which was baked in the website laws pages. I think that I'm not sure which side of the literacy debate you're taking here, but it should be WHICH, and there should be apostrophe between the W and the S. So, anyway, I just wanted to get on and talk about some of those things. One, I think that the guy that did the shooting was thoroughly vetted. I don't think it was a vetting issue. Number two, I think that the whole vetting of the Afghanistan refugees was at least as much on Trump as it was on Biden, because he had more time to do it. He's the one that came up with the Doha Agreement. He's the one that set the entire doused the entire country in kerosene and then set the match. Biden was just president while it was on fire. He's not the one that set it on fire. Don't complain that he didn't get all the cats out. Anyway, that's anybody. If anybody has anything relevant to say, there's some kind of debate going on about literacy rates in my comment section here. Which, by the way, just weighing in on that subject, the whole reason that we have issues right now with test scores going down has a lot more to do with smartphones than it does with anything from the Department of Education. And I find this 54%. I'll look it up. I think that 54% read above a sixth grade level. I'm a tad bit skeptical about that, but I think it'd be interesting to look at that and also see if that's like how many of those are MAGAs. Because I think there's a pretty strong correlation between people that can't or don't read or don't understand what they read and people who vote for Trump. Trump said that the shootings only happened because he was doing such a great job of fighting crime in DC. So if you can make sense of that, you're probably a MAGA. Anyway, once again, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy your leftovers, your turkey sandwiches and whatnot this weekend, your turkey soup or turkey chili or whatever else you make with your leftover turkey. And I will see you on Monday.